Every morning, like clockwork, 7:25 a.m., I'd be walking down Maple Street, my usual large coffee in hand, ready to catch the 7:40 bus to my downtown office. The Phoenix sun was already starting its slow climb, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, and every single morning, without fail, she was there. The woman in the red coat, she'd be at the far end of the bus stop, a solitary figure against the urban backdrop. She always stood perfectly still, her hands clasped in front of her, her gaze fixed on the road ahead. She never spoke, never even looked at her phone. She never sat on the bench, even when it was empty. She just stood there, this silent, patient statue, as if she'd been waiting long before the rest of us even woke up. For 6 months, this was my morning ritual. Me, my coffee, and the mysterious woman in the red coat. Same coat, same spot, every single weekday. The bus schedule was a fickle thing. Sometimes early, sometimes late, sometimes it didn't show up at all. But her presence was the one constant. Through it all, she never once got on. She'd watch it arrive, watch people shuffle on, and then watch it pull away. It was baffling, who waits for a bus they never intend to catch. It became a little game for me, a silent observation. I'd wonder about her story. Was she waiting for someone? Is it a meeting point? The questions piled up, but I never had the courage to ask. The invisible wall of commuter silence is a powerful thing, you know? Then came that one chilly morning in late November. The air had a rare bite to it for Arizona, and you could see your breath fogging up in front of you. I saw her standing there, the vibrant red of her coat a stark contrast to the gray, cold morning. And I don't know why, but that day, I decided was the day. I had to break the silence. I walked over, my heart doing a little nervous flutter. I tried to put on my most non-threatening, friendly smile. "Cold one, huh?" I started, feeling a bit awkward. "You waiting for the 7:42? A simple, harmless question. I expected a nod, a quiet yes, maybe even a small smile back. I got nothing. Absolutely nothing. She didn't even flinch. She just slowly, almost mechanically, turned her head towards me. Her eyes, they were blank, devoid of any emotion. It wasn't hostility, it wasn't fear, it was just emptiness. Her expression was calm, but it was an unnatural calm. It's a kind of stillness you see in a photograph, not on a living person's face. It sent a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with the cold. It was unnerving. I felt my smile falter, and I just stood there, unsure what to do next. The silence stretched on, thick and uncomfortable. It felt like I'd stumbled into a scene from a movie, and I'd forgotten my lines. I just wanted the bus to get there. Then, as if on cue, the familiar hiss of the bus's air brakes cut through the tension. Salvation. People started to line up, their morning routines kicking back into gear. I hesitated, glancing back at her one last time. She had already turned her head back towards the road, as if our bizarre little interaction had never even happened. Anything but the words wouldn't come. I shuffled on board with the rest of the commuters, found a seat by the window, and as the doors closed, my eyes were glued to her. The bus rumbled and pulled away from the curb, and through the glass, I watched her figure shrink into the distance. Still standing there, still staring. A lone red sentinel on a quiet suburban street. That night was restless. I couldn't get her out of my head. I'd close my eyes and see her face. That unnerving stillness. The hollowness in her eyes. It was more than just weird. It felt wrong. My mind raced with possibilities. Was she in some kind of trouble? Did she need help? The more I thought about it, the more I felt a strange sense of responsibility. I couldn't just keep walking past her every day. I made a decision. The next morning, I wouldn't just ask a throwaway question. I'd try to have a real conversation. Maybe I'd offer her a ride. Maybe just ask if she was okay. Something, anything, to break through that vacant stare. I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I was going to solve the mystery of the woman in the red coat. So, the next day, I arrived at the bus stop a little earlier than usual, my plan all set in my head. I scanned the familiar spot at the end of the bench. It was empty. My heart sank a little. Maybe she was just running late. I waited. 7:25 came and went. 7:30, the usual crowd of commuters started to gather, but there was no flash of red. Well, she wasn't there, it felt. Incomplete. Psst. The scene was missing its main character. The dry Arizona wind rustled the leaves on the ground, and I felt a strange sense of disappointment, almost of loss. For the first time in 6 months, the bus stop felt empty and ordinary. As I stood there waiting, something caught my eye. A piece of paper, crumpled and faded, was taped to the glass of the bus shelter. It was fluttering against the pane, held on by a single piece of aging tape. I'd walked past it 100 times without ever really looking at it. But today, with nothing else to focus on, I walked over. It was a missing person poster. The photo was black and white, grainy, clearly a copy of a copy, but the face. My stomach twisted into a knot. It was her. It's the same calm expression, the same distant eyes, the same woman. And beneath the photo, the text was weathered, but legible. I leaned in closer, and the words made my blood run cold. Missing since April 1987, and the name. The name printed in bold letters made my world stop. Margaret Lane. I stared at the poster, then back at the empty spot where she always stood. The photo was decades old, yet the woman in it was identical to the one I'd been seeing every morning. And then it hit me. The coat. The poster described what she was last seen wearing, a distinctive red wool coat. I felt a wave of nausea. 6 months. Every single weekday for 6 months, I hadn't been watching a woman waiting for a bus. I had been watching a ghost, replaying the last moments of her life, stuck in an endless loop at this very spot. The woman in the red coat wasn't waiting for the 7:40 bus. She was just waiting. And I don't think her bus is ever going to come. I haven't seen her since. But now, every time I pass that stop, I can't help but look, and I wonder, who is she waiting for? Thank you so much for watching. If you have any similar chilling stories or local legends from your own town, I'd love to hear about them in the comments below. Dan, if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more mysteries. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you in the next video. Eerie, suspenseful music begins and fades into the background. The paper trembled in Evan's hands. He couldn't stop staring at the photo, his heart pounding a frantic rhythm against his ribs. It was unjust that the woman on the poster looked like the one he'd seen this morning, yet asterisk was asterisk her. The same gentle curve of her smile, the same piercing eyes, the same vibrant red coat that had caught his attention. But it was the date printed beneath her picture that made his stomach twist into a cold hard knot. Missing since April 17th, 1987. 5 years ago. 5 years. He tore his eyes away, forcing himself to look around the street. It was uncanny. The same cracked pavement snaked along the curb. The same faded bus stop sign stood sentinel, its letters peeling under the relentless Arizona sun. It was as if time had completely forgotten this corner of Maple Street. Everything was exactly the same, only she was gone. The walk home felt surreal, the heavy desert air pressing down on him, suffocating him with a sense of dread. That night, sleep was a distant luxury. He was haunted by the unnerving feeling that he was being watched, that unseen eyes were fixed on him from the deep shadows outside his house. Every passing car's headlights seemed to linger a little too long on his window, sweeping across the room like a searchlight. He felt exposed, a bug under a magnifying glass. By morning, the sun burned through the blinds, but it brought no comfort, only the harsh reality that he'd barely slept a wink. He tried to rationalize it, to talk himself down from the ledge of paranoia. "It's just a coincidence," he muttered to the empty room. Maybe she had a relative, a sister, a cousin who looked just like her. Or maybe it was just an old photo that had been left up for years. This was Arizona, after all, a place filled with strange stories and forgotten corners. But curiosity, once it takes root, is a stubborn weed. It has a way of clawing deeper, twisting around your thoughts until you can't ignore it. Later that day at work, the thought of the poster gnawed at him. He couldn't focus. Finally giving in, he used the office phone, his fingers punching in the number listed on the flyer. After a few rings, a tired, frail voice answered. "Hello?" Evan started, his own voice sounding distant. I'm calling about the missing person notice. For Margaret Lane." A heavy pause hung on the line. Then the voice came back, low and unsteady. "Who is this?" I think I saw her," Evan stammered, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. "Yesterday morning, at the bus stop on Maple Street." She was wearing a red coat. The silence that followed was deafening, stretching on for what felt like an eternity. When the woman finally spoke, it was barely a whisper, a ghost of a sound. That's not possible. Why not? Evan asked, a fresh wave of unease washing over him, because the woman's voice trembled. Margaret's been dead for years. Evan froze, the phone feeling like a block of ice against his ear. What do you mean, dead? The poster says she's missing? He heard her take a shaky breath on the other end. They found her car near Iron Creek 2 years ago. It was wrecked. The police said it must have been an accident. She hesitated, her voice thick with old grief. Why are you asking about this now? After all this time, but Evan couldn't answer. His mind was a chaotic storm of confusion, fear, and utter disbelief. A dead woman. He'd seen a dead woman. He managed to thank her, the words feeling like ash in his mouth, and hung up the phone. His hand was shaking. Nothing made sense. How could a woman who died years ago be standing at a bus stop yesterday? Was he losing his mind? That evening, as dusk settled over the town, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Evan found himself drawn back to the bus stop on Maple Street. He had to see the poster again, to confirm what he'd read, to prove to himself that he wasn't crazy. He walked with a sense of urgency, his footsteps echoing in the quiet street. He reached the bus stop, his eyes scanning the glass of the shelter. But the poster, Margaret Lane's poster, was gone. In its place, taped to the exact same spot, was a new one. His heart stopped. It was the same photo, the same woman in the same red coat. But this time, the words printed beneath her smiling face had changed. They were fresh, stark, and terrifying. Missing since November 4th, 1992, he pulled a hand through his hair, his breath catching in his throat. That was today's date. Today, the world tilted on its axis, the familiar streets suddenly feeling alien and threatening. The woman he saw wasn't a ghost from the past. She was a premonition, a warning. And as the last light of day vanished, leaving him in the encroaching darkness, Evan realized with chilling certainty that he was somehow tangled in a story that wasn't finished. And he had a horrifying feeling that the next chapter was about to begin. This story is a chilling dive into the unexplained. What would you do if you were in Evan's shoes? Let me know your theories in the comments below. If you enjoyed this journey into the unknown, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more mysteries. Thanks for watching. The desert sun hung low in the sky, casting long, tired shadows and bathing everything in a soft, golden light. I stood at the bus stop again, just like I did every day. My eyes were glued to the glass panel, where a new poster flapped in the gentle desert wind. It was her again. The same woman, the same striking red coat, the same faint, mysterious smile that seemed frozen in time, but something was different. The date, November 4th, 1992. My blood ran cold. That was the exact day I saw her vanish. Right here at this very stop. In that moment, the world felt like it was tilting on its axis. That night, the silence of my apartment was deafening. It pressed in on me from all sides, amplifying the unease that had taken root in my soul. I poured myself a glass of cheap whiskey, the amber liquid doing little to calm my frayed nerves. My gaze was fixed on a photo I'd taken of the bus stop that morning. I was trying to rationalize it, to convince myself it was just an elaborate prank, a bizarre coincidence, anything but what I feared it was. But as I stared at the photo, my heart began to pound. There, in the reflection of the bus window, almost invisible, stood a faint figure. A red coat, blurred, but absolutely, undeniably there. I hadn't seen her when I took the picture. The whiskey glass slipped from my hand, shattering on the floor, but I barely registered the sound. The next morning, I drove straight to the Metro Transit office, my mind a whirlwind of questions and dread. A clerk with thick glasses and an even thicker accent looked up as I approached. When I mentioned the bus stop on Maple Street, her brow furrowed. "Route 7?" she asked, her voice skeptical. "That line's been inactive since last year. Major construction closed that whole stretch of road." I just blinked at her, my own confusion mounting. "That's impossible," I stammered. "I take that bus every single day." She sighed, a hint of impatience in her expression, and turned her computer screen towards me. "See for yourself," she said. Route 7 stopped service last June. There haven't been any active buses on that line since. A wave of nausea washed over me. The world felt like it was spinning again. What about security footage? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. From the stop, or the buses? She hesitated, then sighed again, a deep, weary sound. You can try the archives. They're in the basement. But honestly, they don't keep much from that route anymore. The basement smelled of dust, neglect, and the slow decay of old paper. It was a forgotten place, a tomb for forgotten memories. A man in a janitor's uniform sat slumped behind a metal counter, half asleep. When I explained what I was looking for, he just shrugged, his eyes barely open. You're lucky, he mumbled. Route 7 had some kind of camera test program back then. It's all old stuff though, VHS. He rummaged under the counter for a moment before pulling out a dusty plastic box, slid it across the counter towards me. The label, written in faded marker, read, Route 7 Maple Street Stop, 10/30th 704. My hands trembled slightly as I took it. I found an old boxy TV and a VCR tucked away in a dimly lit corner. With a deep breath, I slid the tape in. The screen flickered to life with a hiss of static, which then sharpened into a grainy, black and white image of the bus stop. October 30th. The stop was empty. October 31st. A few commuters, their faces blurred and indistinct, came and went. November 1st. The wind howled, sending tumbleweeds skittering across the pavement. Then my heart skipped a beat. November 3rd. There she was, the woman in the red coat. She stood utterly alone, perfectly still, facing the road as if waiting for a bus that would never arrive. Her reflection flickered across the window as a bus finally pulled up, but she didn't move. She didn't get on. The bus doors closed and it drove away, leaving her standing there. But the camera kept rolling. And for a single, chilling second after the bus disappeared from view, she turned. Her head snapped around and she stared directly into the camera. Her eyes were wide, filled with a look of pure, unadulterated terror. It felt like she was looking right through the screen, right through time, and right at me. And then the screen went black. The timestamp in the corner glitched violently. The number spun, then settled. The 4th of November 92 became April 17th, 87. I stumbled backward, my chair clattering to the floor. The date. April 17th, 1987. That was the date on the original missing person poster. The day she was first reported missing. My pulse pounded in my ears like a drum. I scrambled to rewind the tape, my fingers fumbling with the buttons. I had to see it again. I played it back. Same thing. Every single time the bus pulled away, the footage would warp, and the date would jump back 5 years to the day she first vanished. I pulled the tape out of the VCR, my hand shaking so hard, I nearly dropped it. As I turned it over, I saw it. Faint ink, almost completely faded, had been scrawled on the back. 6 words that chilled me to the bone. She never left the stop. The janitor looked up from his doze, his eyes focusing on my pale face. You okay, son? He asked, his voice gravelly. I could barely swallow. Can I keep this? The old man frowned, studying me for a long moment, then gave a slow, reluctant nod. But if you're smart, you'll burn it. That night, I didn't go home. Instead, I drove back to Maple Street and parked my car across from the bus stop. The desert wind howled outside, a lonely, mournful sound. It whipped dust and scraps of paper into swirling vortexes around the empty bench. The VHS tape lay on the passenger seat beside me, feeling impossibly heavy, like a cursed artifact. After sitting in the darkness for what felt like an eternity, I took a deep breath and turned on my headlights. The beams cut through the night, illuminating the lonely stop. For a moment, it was just as I'd left it, empty, desolate. But then, movement, a flicker of color in the periphery, a flash of red. Someone was standing there. Standing in the exact same spot where she always stood. The same stillness, the same silhouette. Only this time, she wasn't looking at the road. This time, she was looking straight at me. Evan's hands gripped the steering wheel so tight his knuckles turned white. Outside, the woman in red stood beneath a flickering streetlight, her silhouette sharp against the pale desert fog. It couldn't be real, he knew it wasn't, but there she was. Exactly as she'd appeared every morning for the past few months. He blinked once, just a single sharp blink, and she was gone. Not faded, not walked away, just gone. He killed the engine and stepped out of the car, the cold desert air a slap against his face. The street was dead quiet, save for the rhythmic tapping of a loose traffic sign in the wind. He crossed to the bus stop, his steps slow, cautious, half expecting her to materialize right in front of him, and that's when he saw it. The poster was back. He stared at it, his breath fogging the cold glass. It was the same face, the same red coat, but the text had changed again. Missing since November 5th, 1992, today's date. His own reflection stared back at him, pale, shaking, eyes bloodshot. For a dizzying second, he swore he saw two reflections, side by side. One his, one hers. He spun around, heart hammering against his ribs, but there was nothing. Just the low hum of the empty street. The next morning, Evan sat in a cold, sterile room at the police station, watching the tape with two officers. They watched it twice, their faces blank with boredom. "It's probably just a glitch," one of them said, shrugging. "Old analog junk does that." "But she looked right at the camera," Evan insisted, his voice cracking. "And the date changed it, jumped back to 1987. The cop just raised an eyebrow. "You been drinking, son?" Defeated. Evan walked out of the station. As he reached into his pocket, a chill went down his spine. The poster he'd torn down from the bus stop that morning, it was gone. He was certain he'd stuffed it in there. That night, he found himself driving back down that same desolate road. He told himself it would be the last time. Just one more look, one more photo, and then he'd walk away for good. But the desert has a way of holding on to people, of keeping them longer than it should. The bus stop was empty, glowing under the dull yellow light. He raised his camera, the familiar weight of it, a small comfort in his hands. He snapped a photo. The flash cut through the darkness like a knife, then faded. A second later, he heard it. The low growl of an engine approaching from down the road. That wasn't possible. Route 7 was abandoned years ago. The sound grew louder, closer. Headlights sliced through the dust as they curved around the bend. It was an old Blue City bus. The number on the side read 07. It slowed to a stop right in front of him, its air brakes hissing loudly in the silence. The doors swung open with a sharp clack. There was no driver inside, just the faint hum of the engine and the stale smell of old cigarette smoke and rain. Evan's pulse hammered in his ears. He took a hesitant step closer, peering through the doorway. The seats were all empty, except for one, at the very back. The woman in the red coat? She turned her head slowly, her face half lit by the flickering interior lights, and she smiled. A small, knowing smile. "You're late, Evan." His name. She knew his name. A wave of pure terror washed over him, stumbled back, tripping over the curb and landing hard on the pavement. The doors hissed shut. The bus pulled away slowly at first, then gaining speed, disappearing into the thick fog down the road that shouldn't even exist. He scrambled to his feet and ran after it, his lungs burning, his legs screaming in protest. But the road just ended. It turned into dirt and weeds. There were no tracks, no lights, no sound. Only the old sign swaying above him, Route 7, inactive. He fell to his knees, gasping for air. When he finally looked up, his blood ran cold. Taped to the glass of the bus stop shelter was another poster, a new one. Missing since November 6, 1992. Evan Carter, age 28. Thank you so much for joining me on this chilling journey. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more tales from the shadows. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you in the next one. Have you ever felt a story pull you in so deep that it starts to rewrite your own? It all began with a simple missing person report. 2 days after he was last seen, a 28-year-old man named Evan Carter vanished without a trace. The official police report was a dead end, unresolved, presumed missing. But for one local journalist, that was just the beginning. Her name was Lydia Barnes, and she had a knack for finding the stories that fell through the cracks. She'd spent years covering the forgotten cases, the ones that gathered dust in police files. But Evan's disappearance felt different. It had an eerie echo she couldn't ignore. Lydia started where every good reporter does, with the people who knew him. His co-workers at the downtown office all painted the same picture. Evan was a man of routine, punctual, quiet, never one to cause a stir. But in the week leading up to his disappearance, his routine had been broken by an obsession. He couldn't stop talking about a woman he saw at the bus stop on Maple Street. Kept saying she didn't age. One of his colleagues told Lydia, a nervous laugh in his voice. Claimed she was from the 80s or something, another confirmed it, adding he was convinced he'd seen a ghost. It sounded like the ramblings of a stressed-out mind, something Lydia had heard a dozen times before. But the consistency of the story, the way everyone mentioned this mysterious woman, planted a seed of doubt. So Lydia did what she did best. She went to see for herself. She drove her beat-up sedan to Maple Street, parking just across from the bus stop. The place was a monument to neglect. The metal bench was eaten through with rust, its green paint peeling away like old skin. The bus sign was bent at a sad angle, as if it had given up trying to stand straight. The timetable, once a source of order, was now just a blur of faded numbers behind cracked plastic. The air felt heavy, stagnant, yet somehow charged. It was the kind of silence that feels loud, as if it holds the memory of every person who ever waited there, every whispered conversation, every sigh of impatience. As Lydia stepped closer, her eyes caught something taped to the inside of the glass shelter. It was a poster, its edges curled and its surface the color of old parchment. The font was stark, the message simple and chilling. Missing since November 4th, 1992, and below it, a name, Margaret Lane. The name sparked a flicker of recognition in Lydia's mind, a faint bell from a story she'd handled years ago, a dusty clipping from the Herald's archives. A sudden urgency took hold, and she raced back to the office. The image of the poster burned into her thoughts. The archive room was her sanctuary, a maze of filing cabinets and bound volumes, smelling of aging paper and ink.
Ow.
She began to dig, her fingers flying through the decades. And then she found it, tucked away in a 1987 issue. The headline jumped out at her. Local woman vanishes from bus stop last seen, wearing a red coat. The article featured the same name, Margaret Lane, the same bus stop. It even had the same grainy, black and white photo from the poster. But the date was wrong, or rather it was different. The poster said 1992. This article was from 1987, a full 5 years earlier. How could the same person go missing from the same place, twice? Her heart began to pound a frantic rhythm against her ribs. And as her eyes scanned the rest of the page, they landed on a smaller, almost hidden article near the bottom. The ink was faded, the text barely legible. Transit worker found dead near Iron Creek. The name of the man was Raymond H. Lane, and his relation to the other story was stated in cold, simple terms: husband of missing woman. Lydia felt a cold dread wash over her. Margaret Lane, the woman who vanished, was married to a man who worked for the city's Metro Transit, and he had died shortly after her disappearance. This wasn't just a coincidence. It was a connection, a thread pulling her deeper into the mystery. Her next stop was the city archives, a formidable stone building that housed the city's official history. She walked up to the front desk, her press badge feeling flimsy and insignificant. "I need to see the transport maps and logs for Route 7, she demanded, her voice steadier than she felt. The old clerk behind the counter peered at her over his glasses, his expression one of mild confusion. "Route 7, he muttered, his voice raspy. "Haven't heard anyone ask about that route in years." He disappeared into the back for what felt like an eternity before returning with a large, dusty cardboard box. Lydia carried it to a reading table, her hands trembling slightly as she lifted the lid. Inside was a time capsule of a forgotten bus line. Old maps with routes drawn in red ink, driver logs filled with looping cursive, and stacks of ticket lists. She sifted through the brittle papers, the smell of dust and time filling her nostrils, and then she found it. The last entry before the route was officially closed. The log was for Bus 07, and the final recorded trip was dated April 17, 1987. The driver's name was listed as R. Lane. Raymond Lane. Lydia's breath hitched in her throat. It was the exact same day his wife, Margaret, had disappeared. The pieces were clicking into place, forming a picture she wasn't sure she wanted to see. At the bottom of the page, a faint pencil-scribbled note made her blood run cold. It read, "Vehicle returned empty. Passenger list missing. The bus had come back. But the driver, and whoever was on board, had not." That night, the case consumed her. Sleep was impossible. She found herself dialing the number for Evan Carter's landlord, grasping at any remaining straws. The police had already searched his apartment, but the landlord mentioned they'd left a few boxes of what he called weird junk. He agreed to let her in, his voice tinged with a mix of curiosity and annoyance. Evan's apartment was sterile and impersonal, scrubbed clean of his presence, except for the boxes. They were stacked in a corner, filled with notebooks, newspaper clippings, and strange diagrams. And at the very bottom of one, Lydia found it. Small, black VHS tape, labeled in Evan's own neat handwriting, were 3 simple words. Route 7, Maple stop footage. Her heart hammered against her chest. This was it, which was what Evan had seen. Back in her own apartment, she pushed the tape into her old VCR. For a moment, there was only static, a screen of dancing black and white snow. Then a grainy image flickered to life. It was the bus stop. The same rusted bench, the same bent sign. The camera angle was fixed, likely from a security feed across the street. A woman in a red coat stood perfectly still, waiting. Lydia recognized the coat from the newspaper description of Margaret Lane. She watched, mesmerized, as the bus pulled up, its headlights cutting through the grainy darkness. The doors opened. The woman didn't move. The doors closed and the bus pulled away, leaving her alone once more. Then, the impossible happened. The woman turned, slowly, and stared directly into the camera. Directly at Lydia. A gasp escaped her lips. Her hand flew to her mouth, stifling a scream, because the face staring back at her was not Margaret Lane's. The face, pale, haunted, and utterly empty, was Evan Carter's. He was wearing the red coat. As Lydia stared in horror, the screen glitched. The timestamp in the corner began to flicker, the numbers shifting like a broken clock. It jumped from NOV6, 1992, back to APR 17, 1987, and then the screen went black. For a long moment, there was only silence and darkness. But as her eyes adjusted, she saw a faint reflection in the blank television screen. Her own apartment, her own living room, and behind her, standing by the window, was a figure. She spun around, her heart seizing in her chest. There was no one there. The window was empty, the streetlights outside casting long shadows across the floor. It must have been a trick of the light, her mind playing games. But then she heard a faint rustle of paper from her desk. The missing poster. The one she'd taken from the bus stop. She'd left it face up, but now it was lying face down on her blotter. With a shaking hand, she reached out and flipped it over. The picture was the same, the layout was the same, but the text had changed. The ink was fresh, the letters sharp and black, as if they had just been printed. It read, "Missing since November 8th, 1992, and below it, a new name, Lydia Barnes. Hello everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Tonight we're journeying into the shadows of a forgotten town to uncover a story that blurs the line between a local legend and a chilling reality. This is the tale of the phantom bus of Route 7. Our story begins in the quiet, dusty town of Maple, where the wind whispers secrets through empty streets. For journalist Lydia Barnes, one secret had become an obsession: the disappearance of Route 7. The city insisted the route was defunct, a relic of the past. But Lydia knew better. She had proof. Nights prior, she'd watched her colleague Evan vanish from the old bus stop on Maple Street. And now, her own face stared back from a missing poster taped to a lamppost. Driven by a need for answers, Lydia returned to the scene. She parked her car, turned off the engine, and started her audio recorder. The stop itself was a picture of decay, a crooked sign, a bench eaten by rust, shattered glass glittering under the moonlight. But something was wrong. Every few seconds, the air around the stop would shimmer, like a heat mirage on a summer road. Through her camera's viewfinder, the distortion seemed to pulse, almost like it was breathing. Lydia whispered into her recorder, her voice a fragile thread in the immense silence. Maple Street bus stop, time 3:14 a.m. If anyone finds this, I'm here to prove Route 7 still runs. Her words hung in the air, a final testament, and then she saw it. Far down the road, a faint red glow began to pierce the darkness. Headlights. The glow was soon followed by a sound, the distant, unmistakable rumble of an old engine, the very same one she'd captured on her tape recorder the night Evan disappeared. A primal fear urged her to step back, to flee, but her feet were frozen. Her breath caught in her throat when she saw him. A figure was standing by the derelict stop, still and silent, staring into the approaching light. It was Evan. He was right there. "Evan?" she called out, her voice cracking. Didn't turn. He didn't even blink. Just waited. A statue carved from the night itself. Moments later, the bus emerged from the rolling fog. The number 07 glowed ominously on its front panel. With a tired hiss of brakes, it glided to a stop precisely where the old sign once stood. The doors opened with a hollow, metallic sigh, inviting her into the unknown. Lydia's eyes darted to the driver's seat. It was empty. The bus was driving itself. The interior lights flickered, casting a sickly yellow glow on rows of vacant seats.
Oh.
But the bus wasn't entirely empty. In the very back, a solitary figure sat motionless. A woman in a vibrant red coat. As Lydia's eyes adjusted, a cold wave of recognition washed over her. Margaret Lane, another journalist who had vanished years ago while investigating the very same route. She was the one who had started it all. Gathering every ounce of courage she possessed, Lydia stepped closer, her heart hammering against her ribs. "Margaret, what is this place? What's happening?" Shh. Her voice barely more than a whisper. The woman in the red coat looked up, her movements slow, ancient. Her voice, when it came, was quiet but carried a chilling finality that cut through the desert air. "He built the route," she said, her gaze distant. "We rode it too long. Now, it rides us." Those words chilled Lydia more than the cold night. They were a riddle and an answer all at once. Her gaze shifted and she saw him, Evan, sitting in the seat behind Margaret. His eyes wide open, unblinking, just as lifeless as the woman in front of him. They were passengers, but they weren't traveling. They were trapped. Margaret's hand lifted weakly, her finger pointing not at Lydia, but at the empty space by the door. "There's always room for one more," she whispered. Lydia stood at the threshold, staring at the haunting tableau inside. And she looked past the bus, down the road stretching into the endless dark. There were no cars, no houses, no signs of life, just a black void swallowing the world whole. And in that terrifying moment, something inside her didn't break from fear. It clicked into place with a horrifying clarity, a profound understanding. She whispered to herself the realization of final, devastating truth. It was never about where the bus went. It's about who remembers it. It was a memorial, a ghost powered by memory. The only way to join them, the only way to truly understand, was to become a memory herself. With a sense of calm resignation, Lydia Barnes took a final step. She stepped onto the bus. The doors hissed shut behind her, sealing her fate. The old vehicle shuddered once, a final sigh, and then began to roll forward. Its headlights cut a path through the fog, growing fainter and fainter until they were just a pinprick of light. Finally consumed by the horizon where the desert met the night sky. Inside, the reflections in the windows began to change. The empty seats filled with the ghostly images of those who had come before, Margaret, Evan, and now Lydia. Silent passengers on a route that didn't travel through space, but was trapped in a single, repeating moment of time. Weeks turned into months. The city of Maple, eager to erase its ghosts, officially removed the Maple Street bus stop. The ground was flattened, the last remnants of the sign hauled away. To any passerby, it was just another patch of empty roadside dirt. But the desert remembers. One night, a patrolling police officer driving through the area reported something strange. For just a second, he saw a flicker of lights in the fog. He heard the faint, grinding rumble of an old bus engine fading into the distance down that deserted road. And near the lot, taped to a fractured piece of mirror-like glass, a single, weather-beaten poster fluttered in the restless wind. It read, "Missing since May 1993, Lydia Barnes. Last seen, waiting for the Route 7 bus." The wind howled and caught on a rusted nail. A single scrap of red fabric danced in the dark, a final silent testament to the stories the road keeps. And somewhere, out there in the infinite darkness, you could almost hear the low, familiar hum of an old engine, starting its route all over again. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the unknown. If you enjoyed the story, please hit that like button, subscribe for more content, and let me know in the comments what you think happened to Route 7. Until next time, stay curious and be careful what stories you go chasing in the dark.